Morning, everybody. How's everyone doing? Happy Monday. I hope that everyone had a great weekend and that you have a nice warm or iced cold cup of something to drink this morning. Coffee, tea, preferably. We're waiting for a few more people to enter, but I just wanted to start off our coffee talks this morning with our land acknowledgement. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's really great to see everybody. So cool. Georgian College acknowledges that all campuses are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Georgian College is dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. Thank you. So we have a really exciting morning planned. First off, I wanted to shout out a couple of events that are happening later in the week for those that are interested. The Sandbox has a really neat mitigating mental health effects of COVID-19 event coming up on the 9th at 3:30. It's geared towards HR professionals, but when I was looking through the content, it looks to me like it would be really great for anyone that's going to be integrating any other staff members back onto their teams or working alongside any staff members, could be a partner, etc. So if you want to check that out, head on over to the Sandbox website and I'll pop that up in the chat. In addition to that, I saw a great event out of the Barrie Chamber of Commerce, and it's called Reopening Safely and Prepping Your Workplace, and that's on June the 10th. So if you're interested in either of those events, please check them out. And yeah, so we'll do our best to make sure that we're sharing all of the things that are amazing all over Simcoe County and further afield. And yeah, it's great to be connected with all of you, and I'll turn it over to Jenna for the housekeeping. Thanks, everybody. Happy Monday.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back, and I do see a couple new faces, so I'm glad you guys are able to join us. I'll introduce Teena in a moment, but if you have questions while Teena is presenting, please put them into the chat, and then Sarah and I will read them out after, once Teena has done or completed her talk. So we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to address your questions. Our coffee talks are going to be taking a break over the summer, so June will be the last month that we have them. We have a great lineup coming. And what we'll do is we'll post on our YouTube channel all the previous coffee talks that we've had to date. So that will be a great resource for you guys to access 24/7. And yeah, I'm excited to introduce Teena of Botree.
Hold on, I guess I needed to unmute. Good morning, everyone. So I do see lots of familiar names and faces on here as well. So I'm hoping everyone is safe and healthy at home, or hopefully back at work. So for those of you who don't know me, I won't bore you with a long intro other than to say that I am the founder of Botree, and we have been working in this space for just coming up on 10 years. And really have refocused over the last 2 years more in this small to mid-sized business. We have mainly focused on multinational companies, and so we really love the change that we've made in working with small to mid-sized businesses. And really our goal has been to work with organizations to help optimize their overall process, which is from how do you get your service and or product to market, also whilst improving and optimizing people. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen with everybody here. And just make sure, give me a thumbs up that you can see it. Okay, thank you, Sue. So the plan for today is really to just share out some stuff. I know some of the people on this call will know it quite well. They've seen sort of the beginning portion, and I'll explain to you why this is so relevant today. So we're going to start. Make sure you have your Java. We're going to do a little bit of fun, and so this is going to require you to have a piece of paper and divide it into 4 quadrants. I'll give you the heads up on that. And we're going to learn a little bit more today. Some of you may already know about this type of communication style, but I'm hoping to really add to whatever you currently know and really connect it and align to the status that we're in today and how you can use this tool to be more effective, particularly as we start to re-engage into the workforce or with our employees. So why does communication matter so much today? I think communication has always mattered, and it's been something that has been what would have been more called or classified as a soft skill, but more so now than ever, communication is one of the key pieces that we need to be skilled in and be executing on, particularly when we are being over-communicated in this pandemic. So traditionally, why does communication matter? Because it really helps us achieve our own goals in a more efficient way. It also helps us personally and professionally. So as we think about the workforce, and whether you are a leader of an organization or you are an employee of an organization, if you think about the times when you've been your most optimized or your most productive, if you really sort of break it down, what you will start to see is that you felt as though you were either communicating the most effective with your employees and they really understood what the objective was, or you as the employee really clearly understood what the organization was setting you out to achieve. And last but certainly not least is communication helps us with relationships. And so it's sort of a tool that we can pull out in our toolbox around being at a party and trying to connect with new people at that party, and how best can you communicate on their level, almost like understanding being in a space and maybe being the only English speaking person, you can use communication in the same sort of context around language. So I'm going to ask you a few fun questions. And so if you don't mind, literally break up your sheet of paper into 4 quadrants. In the top left, if you can just call it green. In the top right, call it red. In the bottom left, call it yellow. And in the bottom right, call it blue. So I want you to picture now that we are all at a party. And as you get to the party, are you green, the one who's going to get a game started? Are you going to be red, the person who's telling a great fun story? Are you yellow, somebody who's really just sitting in the sidelines and kind of taking everything in? Or are you blue, the person who's engaging in conversations? So again, green is getting a game started, red is telling a story, yellow is people watching by the sidelines, or blue, engaging in conversations. So the next one is you think about being in your workplace and you're having to work in a group. Are you the person who, green, defines the goal and assigns the different tasks? Are you red, the one who is sort of the visionary, coming up with lots of ideas? Are you yellow, the person who's analyzing the problem and gathering information? Or blue, are you the one who's asking for everyone's opinions? So again, green is defining the goal and assigning a task. Red is coming up with the ideas. Yellow is analyzing the problem and gathering information. Or blue, asking everyone's opinions. So now I'm sure everyone can think about this one as we are all being isolated with our partners. If you do have a partner in the house or even your children, it doesn't work as well with a dog or a cat, but any human that you've been isolated with. If you think about some conflict, I'm sure we've all encountered some level of conflict or stress during these times, I want you to think about, are you the person who's quickly looking for resolution? That's green. Are you the one feeling as though you need to share your side of the story? That's red. Are you the person who's sitting back and sort of taking it all in and listening, sort of taking a back seat, which is blue? Or are you the person who's trying to break down the problem? So again, in conflict with your partner, are you green, looking for a quick resolution? Red, sharing your side of the story? Blue, taking the back seat and listening? Or yellow, breaking down the problem? Another question. So this one is always difficult for us to answer, but I want you to think about, if I was to go talk to some friends of yours and they were to say which qualities they think you need to work on, so maybe our blind spots, would they say that you need to work on not being as confrontational, green, not being as disorganized, red, not being such a perfectionist, yellow, or not being so conservative, blue? And again, so that is confrontational, green, disorganized, red, perfectionist, yellow, or conservative, blue. I'm just going to ask you one more. I probably could ask lots, but we don't have that much time, so let's ask you one more. This is one of my favorite ones, and if we were live, I'd get you to share it, but I usually can see which side of the room you're going to. But if you were to think about what kind of animal you would like to be, or that you are the most like, if someone was just to describe you as an animal, would it be that you're a lion? So you're really authoritative and respected? That's green. Are you a funny monkey who loves to entertain and be overly enthusiastic? That's red. Are you someone who sees yourself like an owl, sort of wise and introverted? That's yellow. Or are you a beautiful, supportive, and compassionate dolphin, being blue? So again, if you see yourself most like a lion, you're green. Most like a monkey, you're red. Most like an owl, you're yellow. And most like a dolphin, you're blue. Okay, so Jenna is going to just share a poll, and we just want you to answer. Look at your quadrants. Which quadrant did you sit the most in? Were you in the green, the red, the blue, or the yellow? And I think Jenna's going to share the results with us. It's tricky when you're not the driver. There we go. Interesting. Quite the spread. Okay, so just keep an eye on these numbers. I'm going to play a little video for you.
What if people had their needs written all over them? This person wanted more independence. That person wanted a bit more reassurance. Would it change the way you work together? Would it make your job easier? Yeah, it probably would. But that's not the real world. Or is it? Maybe if you had the right decoder, everyone's needs would be a lot more obvious. It would be clear how to work more effectively together, to be more productive, more satisfied. all you would need is a tool to help you understand where people are coming from. This is DISC, your decoder. It gives you a way to quickly understand the needs and priorities of the people around you. It describes 4 basic styles: D, I, S, and C. Here's how it works. First, everyone has a dot. That dot tells you your DISC style. For instance, if you have a D, or dominant style, you probably drive toward results, insist on immediate action, and challenge the status quo. Most likely, other people with the D style share your priorities, even though you might butt heads from time to time. Different styles may find this same D approach to be blunt, intimidating, or insensitive. If you have an I, or influence style, you probably approach work with enthusiasm, enjoy collaboration, and take quick action. Others with the I style probably find your energy exciting, even if the two of you are a little too optimistic at times. Different styles may find this sort of liveliness and fast pace to be sloppy or reckless. Or you may have an S, or steadiness style, which means you like to support people, maintain stability, and enjoy collaboration. People with the S style will probably appreciate your patient and easygoing nature, even if that means there's little sense of urgency. Different styles might see you as overly accommodating or indecisive. And finally, if you have a C, or conscientiousness style, you probably focus on accuracy. Use your logic to challenge ideas and seek stability to ensure consistent outcomes. Others with the C style will like that you prioritize getting things right, even if the two of you can get bogged down in analysis. But for people with different styles, this cautious pace may feel dry, sapping their natural energy. Now, in the real world, it's not always that simple. Your dot can be between 2 styles, such as in the area between I and S, and you can have 4 or even 5 priorities. For example, in addition to collaboration, enthusiasm, and support, you might also share the priority of accuracy with your C coworkers. The point is, even though you need to recognize your own DISC style, you also need to know where the people you work with are coming from. Whether you're simply connecting with others, solving problems, or working through conflict, you'll have to stretch from time to time. And using DISC as a guide, you'll have a better sense of when and why that sort of adapting is so crucial to not only your success, but the success of everyone in your workplace.
Okay, so hopefully that gave you all a little more detail. And I always like to share the reason why we have used DISC over the last 10 years. I always say I actually, when starting my career, moving out of being a registered nurse and moving into the business world, it was a long time ago. So I think 24 years now. And this was the very first thing that the corporation that I worked for taught me. And what I can say is that obviously this is Wiley DISC that we use, and it comes from Wiley Publishing. So it's, got over 200 years of publishing exposure and over 40 years of data. And so if you've ever done one of these assessments, it has a 94% accuracy. So it's all based on sort of interrelated reliability testing. And it's a really, really cool assessment to do. But what we're finding is that particularly in these really trying times, that communication is the #1 thing that is helping people get through some of these difficult days, whether it be new work environments, the unknown of what does tomorrow look like. And so that was sort of why we thought this would be a really great tool to share with you. It's very easy to remember. It's something that you can even start to listen for or observe in your partners, your relationships in life, both personally and professionally. So I'm going to ask Jenna to put up the next poll. And this really is just, now that you've watched that video, could you see yourself in the same spot that you landed in when we asked the sort of funny questions? Or did you see yourself described differently when you saw the video? So the D would have been the green where you might have been before. The I is influence or red. The S is blue. And the C is yellow. So if you think about that, the video, did you find yourself feeling more familiar with one of those colors that was in the video? So let's see what the split is now. So a little bit of a difference here. We seem to have more people that are recognizing themselves as being conscientiousness. A little bit more influencers on here. So now I just want to share with you a little bit about this, and you know, I know that we share the questions at the end, but if anybody has anything specific as I go through the individual areas, particularly as it pertains to maybe working remotely right now, or either trying to re-engage your employees back into a workspace, or you are the employee having to be re-engaged into the workforce, this is really where it will become super relevant. So really important to note that yes, it's broken up into 4 quadrants. It actually has 12 priorities. So what's really important is that no one person is in one box. We actually are a blend of all 4 of these styles. And it really is something that is, I always say, people sometimes don't want to recognize, they don't necessarily want to recognize themselves as one of these areas, and really having people work in a workplace or on a group project, having the different quadrants come together is the most effective. Everybody brings their gift to the workplace or to the world based on the way that you communicate. I should also note, people ask us always about, does this change based on gender? Does it change based on the country in which you live, so culture? And so based on all the data that comes out of this, it is not gender specific. Obviously, we talk about living in a social environment, and so, you know, some people may feel as though they are more like a particular quadrant. However, when it comes down to your inherent desired form of communication, it has no gender relation or culture relation either. So before I get into the specific ones, I won't bore you with reading over, but you can start to see, you know, this dominant communication style is really more direct, a little bit more forceful, strong-willed. If we start to think about people that we may all know out there, you can start to think of some professionals, some people that we look up to that sort of sit in that dominant style as well. What's really important to note is that as you go across the quadrants, so from a D to an S, I want you to imagine that we all have an elastic band. And if you had to communicate, and you were a D, and you had to communicate with an S style, you have to imagine that elastic band without any stress or any conflict is already quite tense. So as you add in the stressors of day-to-day, and again, thinking personally, professionally, and that elastic requires a lot more tension. And sometimes what we find is that the elastic will actually break. And so again, the same with the I to the C, and we'll sort of, I'll share out a little bit more about those individual styles. Apologies, for some reason I seem to be losing my voice here. So as we look at the dominant style, again, these people are, you can sort of think about them as being more bold or decisive. Sometimes they're seen as being quite competitive. They don't necessarily come across as people who are really people-oriented. And when you think about the challenges that we're in right now, and you think about some of their fears, which is that fear of not having control of things, maybe being taken advantage of, maybe being in a vulnerable situation. As you think about re-engaging these type of people back into the workforce, you're really going to have to think about the fact that they are looking very much for a solution. They want to be part of the solution. They may become overbearing and single-minded. So why these things are really important is it takes the people part out of it and allows us to really see the conflict and the challenges that the individual is having. It allows us to not take those maybe single-minded, very bold statements from a dominant style, not taking it personally. Other things to note around sort of their behavior in these virtual spaces. For those of you, I think it was about 15%. So if we were to have all the cameras on right now, and those of you who thought you were a dominant style, you may start to get quite annoyed that I'm still talking. That you know, any sort of chitter chatter about, you know, how's your family and how's your dog. Dominant style communicators really don't appreciate a lot of social talk in, you know, for the most part. And they really are the people who like to stick to the agenda. So making sure that you have an agenda and making sure that you stick to it is going to be very important for this dominant style. And as I mentioned, when you think about that dominant style, really what you need to watch out for is the interaction with the S, because they will have very much a lack of patience for an S style, who, when we'll get to the S, you'll have a little bit more understanding as to why. So as we start to think about the influencer style, these people are very much the ones who walk into a room and seem to have people sort of flock to them almost. They are charming, they are very social, they tend to be very optimistic and very outgoing. I will say that sometimes this communication style is seen as being a little bit more flighty, a little bit more disorganized, sort of the person who's got all these great ideas but doesn't seem to necessarily follow through on them. And so when you think about the environment that we're in right now, this style is struggling the most, being isolated. They are very much motivated by social recognition, being around people. Likely the eyes on this call would have their camera on. If they even knew what this topic was about, they're probably people who are showing up for the Monday coffee talks because they just need to socialize. And if it's through a quick, you know, chat on the side when no one's, you know, they might not even be paying, they likely aren't paying too much attention to what's happening on this. They're really just here for that social interaction. So we always say with an I, check in on them, especially during these challenging times, because they are really seeking hope. So they will need reassurance. They need to know that things are going to be okay. And they will get overly talkative in these types of challenging times. So ways that you can help support an I or really get optimize an I in these virtual spaces is allowing them to express their opinions. Especially in virtual platforms, you may really want to encourage them to use the chat feature so they aren't talking over people and continually stepping in while somebody else is trying to talk. And where, again, if you think about that elastic band that I mentioned, you'll start to see that their opposite is the C. And so what they will do is they will start to really overshare and will get really stress out a C, because they will have so many ideas and they will overwhelm a C during these times. So if you think about the people that you work with, or if your partner or your child, whoever you're being isolated with right now is a C, I can tell you my husband is a C, and my basically my right hand in business is a C. And if you haven't realized yet, I am a right off the charts I. So during this pandemic, there has been some challenging times, and my elastic band has been stretched quite a bit. So as we move over to the, I'm sorry, this says dominance and it should say supportive. My apologies. I don't know really what happened here. So ignore the top one because it's on both of them. My C colleague would be dying right now, but the I in me doesn't care as long as you guys still like me at the end of this. With the S style, these people tend to be more reserved, very cooperative. If we were to see the gallery view of everybody on this call, as I would ask some questions, S's like to nod a lot. They're very agreeable. And I always say with S's, these are the ones that we miss the most in a work environment, because they are very patient, they're steady going. If we don't give them sort of notice or ask them to think about their opinions or their ideas before the meeting, they actually will show up and say nothing. And we sort of take that as they don't have an opinion. And my advice to leaders and who are not S's or S's themselves is be sure to make sure your voice is heard, because you can be lost, particularly with these other styles around you. Of course, right now, an S is under these conditions really seeking stability. So they are the ones that just want a decision to be made. They want to know that by August 1st, they will be back doing things. They really prefer status quo. It's more challenging for them to, in general, kind of get through and see that there are other ways to do things. They really like timelines, but they don't like short timelines. So the fact that every day things are changing, we're hearing different things about when the restaurants are going to open, or when we're going to be able to have more than 5 people together in a social setting. These are very difficult times for your S's, and so it's really important if you're thinking about in the work environment or even at home, is making sure that they have the ability to have information in advance, giving them a chance to think about it, and for them, they really do, in this type of environment, prefer that everybody has a chance to be heard. So you will see that if you're having a lot of virtual calls with different teammates, and you start to identify the one who nods a lot on these calls, maybe doesn't share much of their opinion as you go around the circle and get people to start asking or taking part in the discussion, they tend to just be very agreeable, and you may be missing their voice. So again, I've already mentioned it, but if you can think about that dominant style and the steadiness style, again, that elastic band, A dominant style, especially in these challenging times, is going to continue to sort of override that S style. And in some cases be very, the S is going to be very, very frustrated in these times. And we see it a lot when there is a dominant leader within an organization who happens to have quite a few steadiness employees, where it's really difficult, and they almost see these people as not being innovative right now, or not stepping up and doing their part, as we are all working virtually or looking for solutions to move forward. And so I really encourage you, if you feel that you are a D, to really step back and remember that these people have a great voice. They just need a little bit more time. And it's a little bit more challenging for them to make fast decisions. And the last one, and again, it says dominance as well. This is not, it's conscientiousness. So these communicators come across much more skeptical. They are much more precise. They're extremely dependable, but they're really all about facts and figures and evidence. And so you can start to think about them in this environment where, like, literally there is no rhyme or reason some days as to the information that is being shared to us. And they, in virtual settings like this, typically they are the ones that have their cameras off, and may not feel as encouraged or engaged in a virtual environment with their cameras on. They become a little bit more withdrawn, particularly under stress. And as you start to re-engage them, you know, when you think about re-engaging back into the workplace, they really will be the ones that may come back to you with 30 questions about even, you know, what is the protocol for PPEs and the distance between workspaces. And for a leader who may be leading this type of employee, who by chance might be an I, it can be extremely challenging, because the influencer style will feel as though the conscientiousness person is questioning or challenging their decisions or their movements. So as I mentioned, in a virtual space, they really will not want to be pushed on making any sort of decisions. And like I said, they really do appreciate their privacy. So being really conscientious around how you're trying to engage people in this virtual environment is really important, as you start to think about how do they best communicate and how are they best motivated. And so again, you know, the opposite, I mentioned the I, is just making sure that you don't see them as being condescending, or that their questions and their desire for sort of precision or facts or figures should not be seen as it's that they don't trust you. It's really how they gain comfort and how they best are optimized in their in the environments that we're in. So I'm going to pause, because this is a ton of information. There's days upon days that you could spend talking about the different styles. I will go back just a little bit here, and again, just sort of share out that as you start to think this through, people often, there's lots of tips and tricks around, you know, it would be great if everybody showed up with their actual style. I mean, I'd love it if I could see what all of your styles are on here, because I could see which ones are totally annoyed by me and which ones are loving it. And, but the reality is that we don't have that decoder. I think that the beautiful thing about this type of communication style is that it really allows you to find where you are, where you think you are within this map. It also then starts to allow you to think about, oh my goodness, you know, I've always thought that this person was super annoying, or they were lazy, or there's a number of different things we think about people. And now you can start to say, it's not them as a person, it is their communication style. And I think that allows us to start to see how everybody can show up and be effective in the workplace. And then more importantly, particularly with this one that we use, it starts to give you sort of some strategy around how best can I toggle. And so I always say to people, again, if I could see everybody, I might be able to gauge even ages on here. But for those of you who remember the old dial tuner radio, I always picture that radio as I have my favorite station, and I always go to that favorite station. But if I want to work with, say, Sarah, and I want to make sure that she feels engaged and motivated and optimized, she might not like the same radio station as me. She's operating on a different radio station. So I say, it's my job to turn or toggle to her radio station, so she can hear me clearly, she can understand what I'm asking her to, which part I need her to be part of. And so that is one of the best parts about really educating yourself and engaging in the beauty of mastering communication, because you really do, you get to show up better in the world, you get to learn so much more when you really have that lens of, we all bring something amazing to the world and to the workplace, but it's my job to be toggling and learning how best to communicate with those different styles. So that is all I have to share today. I know that there's often lots of questions. I hope that I brought you some value, something you can put in your toolbox. And I'll open it up to Jenna and Sarah if there are any specific questions.
Thank you so much, Teena. Love that comment, Dave. That's hilarious. He'd recommend toggling between Rock 95 and Cool FM.
I was going to say that, but I was going to be careful.
So good. And thank you so much for sharing this with us. I know you gave me the opportunity to have this conversation with my partner that I live here with, and I just can't wait to see all the mistakes I've been making with my communication style over the past few months. But anyways, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I'm like you. I would love to see what everybody in the room, where they line up on this, and just, it's just so interesting. So there were some questions in the chat, and between Jenna and myself, we'll go back and forth and just make sure that everyone's questions were answered. So here we go. The first question is coming from James Bravos. Do you recommend embracing your style, or if you want to change, should you actively strive for a different style? I also wondered that.
Okay, that is a great question, and I'll tell you just a really quick story, and I hope this will answer it. So when I left my nursing career and went into the corporate world, and back then, this was a paper assessment. So you answered a bunch of questions on paper, and I answered it, and you might be able to figure out what I came out as. But the long and the short of it is, I spent an entire career believing and wanting to be one of these communication styles, because I felt as though if I was that communication style, then I met the job requirements, the title that I wanted to acquire. And what I can tell you is that I was terrible for a significant amount of years in a particular role that I was doing. And fast forward 24 years later, actually last January, I went to take a course, and I mean, we've been sharing this with our clients and teaching it for years. But I hadn't done the assessment, because I mean, why would I? I loved the style I was. And so I went and did the assessment, and now it's, you can't fool it. It took me a long time. So the assessment should only take you 10 minutes. But when you're trying to fool it, it's very similar to sort of an AI, the psychometric testing and stuff. It kept coming out as this different one. I actually went and paid for it. separately 2 times more because I was convinced it was wrong. And so when I finally came to the realization that it was right, and I had been spending most of my corporate life trying to be something else, I realized that a lot of the mistakes that I made and the challenges that I came across was because I was trying to be something different instead of embracing my inherent communication style, which is a beautiful style. I bring great things to the world. And so just so you know, because I am, like I said, I'm an off the charts I, and I really wanted to be a D. I wanted to be a leader who was direct and results oriented, and that people would look at me and see that I was this great leader. And I was a terrible leader for many, many, many years because I wasn't embracing the part of me that could be a great leader. And if you actually looked at my profile, if you remember in the video, they said sometimes you get shading into another area. I have a lot of shading in that D area. Now, is that because of the job that I did for a long time? Is it because I was trying to fake it for 20 some years? I don't know, but I have the ability, and I have the ability to toggle to that. So really long answer to say, show up for who you are, because that is the gift that you bring in every environment that you're in.
That's cool. I had a question. I wonder if this changes as you get older or have more experiences. Like, I feel like, some people may show up in one area, and then, as they progress through their journey, they start to shift to another area just in response to their experiences. I don't know if that comes up at all.
So that's another common question. And the reality is, or the way it, based on all the research, and if my C colleague was on here, she could give you every data point as to the research. It shouldn't change. Your priorities may change, but your natural, when you are the most comfortable and the most relaxed and not in any sort of stressful environment, your communication style should not change, but you may have a change in some of your priorities.
Okay, that's interesting. And I think Sarah had the same question. We're twinning this morning. Scholarly Elite, if you're on here, are you interested in asking your question? We can unmute you. Yeah. Hey, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Good. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're having an amazing morning so far. Hi, Teena. This was an amazing presentation. I learned so much. It really sparked in me this idea of whether this is an appropriate or just an advantageous tool to use during the interview process. And so I was wondering, how do you recommend incorporating it into the hiring process?
So keep in mind there are tons of different assessments out there. The most comparable to this, and in fact, Wiley Disc uses Myers-Briggs as well. So any of you have done Myers-Briggs. There are a lot of organizations that do use DISC. I always say it's recommended, like in an ideal world, like utopic, is you map out your whole company and you sort of see where everybody plots. And then often what you see is you start to see some gaps. So as you think about, there may be some gaps. I will say that it's interesting because you do start to see some similarities in different industries, in different careers. You start to see that it does draw certain communicators to certain industries. I would never make a decision off of a DISC assessment. I would say I advise organizations to use it when they are at the place where they want to hire the person, because what it does for you as an employer is it gives you this roadmap to be able to optimize that employee. And so but to base a decision on whether, unless you're really coming down to the crunch and you got two people and you are really just stuck on being able to, that would be the only time I would say it might be helpful, but it's really a great tool to be able to fully engage a new employee into your organization and maximize them.
Thanks, Arlinda. I'm sure you are busy hiring people with your tutoring and hybrid classes. It's a big time for you. That's good. More questions in the chat. I'm looking, okay, Suzanne, are you interested in asking your question out loud? And if not, I'm happy to answer for you. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Do you feel that leaders exist in every quadrant, or are people in certain quadrants, are they more limited to certain positions?
You see leaders in every quadrant. Again, keeping in mind that this is a communication style. It's your preferred communication style. If you start to think about, you know, some of the best leaders that we, you know, I'm not going to put any of my political opinions on this call. So, but if we start to think about some amazing leaders, it would be really hard for us to, we call it people reading. So it'd be really hard for us to figure out exactly where they sit, because they are so good at toggling around all of the different quadrants. So I would say amazing leaders are amazing communicators, and it doesn't matter which one they sit in naturally.
Okay, that's great. And then Heather, I'll open the question to you if you want to ask your question, and we get to see you next week, which we'll talk more about.
Yes. Oh, thanks, Sarah. Sure, I can ask. We have what I believe, we haven't actually done a formal assessment with her, but we have, I think, a high C. She's got the S, I think, too, but she's a high C. She actually is our web developer, so she's very, very, like, let's just get it done, and very specific. She's very detail oriented, and so she's very kind and very gentle. But I wonder sometimes when I communicate with her, because I'm an IS default, I really try and pull on that D like you, Teena, but, you know, being a business owner and having to drive the results, but my need to explain in great detail sometimes, I think, really bogs her down. So often I am more direct in writing. So I will send an email and then say, you know, if you want to have a conversation about this, that, the other thing. So any tips or thoughts around being able to sort of hone that in a bit more? And I'm never offended. If somebody says, get to the point, Heather, I'm absolutely, okay, got it, I'm on it. But any point or tips to sort of hone that in and help work with my C?
So thanks, Heather. So my right hand is a C, and it has taken us, and we train on this, and it's taken us years. And I'll be honest with you, an I has an even harder time toggling to a C, because we are, if you look at this screen and think, on to the right hand side, influence and social, the thing that they have in common is people, right? So, and then on the left, it's facts, it's logic sense. So what happens if you had a straight C, you're often being very people oriented. If she was a CS, then you could pull on the S part and have that common thread between the people end. What I find very, very helpful with the C is they like a lot of detail, and so being very specific on what you're asking for, giving lots of information, lots of facts, figures, timelines, and not a lot of fluff. I don't know how else to say that, but
that's fine. Yeah.
Not a lot of fluff, but very and often now, because it just, you know, you're so busy and you got days where, again, that elastic is already stretched just when you're even talking to that person, let alone trying to get them to do something you need them to do. And so what I often do is I will say, here's the end goal of what I need. You come back to me and tell me how you're going to get there, and then I can fill in the gaps.
Okay.
I find that very, very helpful. I love my C. She makes me look 100 times better than when I'm not with her. So I embrace the C.
Mm-hmm.
But she also has learned that sending me, 3 research papers and 10 options, I just don't even see the email. I don't even ever answer it. So, and the only other thing one other thing is to encourage them to check in a lot, because a C, when they hit 60%, their 60% effort or 60% result is like yours and mine 200%.
Right.
So they're already doing an amazing job at 60% because of their detail and their orientation to it. So I always say, check in with me earlier, because otherwise she overdoes it, way overdoes it.
I can just tell in her email, so specific, detail oriented, very like bullet points, which I love, right? Yeah. From a detail perspective. But all the things you're saying, as much as she is very gentle and kind, and you can just see her going, okay, yep, got it. Okay, let's move on. So love that. So I took some notes. Thank you so much, Teena. Hopefully that helps someone else too.
Thank you so much, Heather. So at this point, we've closed out the questions, and I know there was some questions on here. I just wanted to say, especially that Heather is just chatting, highlight the fact that Heather is going to be joining us next Monday, Coffee Talks, 10 a.m., same time, same channel. And she'll be speaking on the art of saying no, so setting strong boundaries during COVID-19. I've had the chance to work with Heather, and I'm very much a yes person, and so that was a really, really great session for me to take part in. And I know if anyone is similar to me in that saying yes or trying to really manage my boundaries during this time, this will be a really important session for you to take on. And Jen has popped up into the chat some other opportunities. We have Jen Walker also on this call, a favorite of ours, building your business through community alongside Brandon Houston. I'm so excited for that one too. And then the final for our, I guess, our summer session, our spring session, would be Dominika Zapolnik, who'll be teaching us how to write a press release, which is going to be really critical as we, move through this time and start to innovate ourselves if we haven't already. So all cool skill sets. And Teena, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to work with us today doing this DISC assessment, and I guess knowing where I sit on this wheel. And I was actually texting my colleagues on the call here, like, what are you, so that we all know how to really get things done this week and beyond. Thank you so much, Teena, for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and everybody else, thanks so much for joining us this morning. It's just incredible to see your faces and to know that you're on here, and hope to stay connected with you all, and enjoy your week, and see you next Monday. Take care, everybody.